I was recently revisiting some of my old high school teachers, and while waiting in the office, I was explaining what I had done with my life as a dog groomer and show handler within the few years since I had left. While explaining, the nurse of the school came to me and expressed great pride in her silver lab she bought for $4,000 a few months ago. Now, being the show person I am, maybe a snob as some of you will say in the comments, I proceeded to explain to her that silver labs are not a real thing and that she was probably scammed with a mixed breed. She wasn't having any of it, claiming I don't know anything, and she guaranteed me that the dog was AKC champion bloodlines. Despite me literally working with dogs every day of my life, she says I was the stupid one. On my way home, it made me upset to think that all she did was waste $4K on a pile of probably neurotic medical issues of a mixed breed. That was making me think about how often I see so many people brag about unhealthy dogs that they have that are off standard and rare color or extra large or extra small. Don't get me wrong, not everyone needs a perfect example of a breed standard for a dog, especially for a pet, but there's a difference between spending $4K on a well-bred, healthy, regular colored dog compared to $4K unhealthy, rare colored dog. It's time I explain these dogs are not worth more and why you shouldn't be drawn into buying them. Silver Lab, English Cream Golden Retrievers, Merle French Bulldogs, they all have one thing in common. Those colors are not in the standard, and, in some cases, not in the breed naturally at all. Now, not every pet dog out there needs to be a show quality dog. There are plenty of dogs who come from show parents that just aren't cut out for the ring for one reason or another. However, those I mentioned above are far worse than just being an off color, as some of those colors are not naturally in the breed's genes. Now, to understand this terminology, we need to look at breed standards. Some breed standards, as I mentioned in my dog show myths video, can be as long as several pages, Pyrenean Shepherds, or as short as half a paper. Color is usually not worth the most points in most breeds, and in some breeds, any color or combination of colors is acceptable. Conversely, some breeds, the color is vague but generalizes a specific shade or idea, like golden retrievers that specify rich, luxurious golden of various shades, but penalizes dogs who are too light or too dark. Give leniency to puppies though, because they're still growing. Some standards are so specific that it's an outright disqualification for a certain color dogs. An example is German Shepherd dogs, in AKC at least, which state white German Shepherd dogs are a disqualifying color. They can still be GSDs, but they just can't be shown in dog shows. Other standards may specify certain percentages of color on a dog's body or small patterns and markings, however. Like how some breeds can have a white blaze on the chest that's acceptable as long as it isn't covering too much, or perhaps a white tip on the tail. Color is usually one of the last points put into a breed standard, and normally is not a real major determining factor. Normally. For some breeds, color is practically irrelevant, like in greyhounds, which even state color and pattern is immaterial, meaning it doesn't matter. There can be a brindle greyhound, or a solid white greyhound, or a black greyhound with a white spot, and they'll all be judged the same on coat color. Though I'm sure greyhound people will tell me something different because judges have their own preferences. But color in some breeds is so heavily important that the most points go into color, particularly in breeds where color defines the breed as a whole. An example is Dalmatians. Everyone knows a Dalmatian by their white bodies and black or liver spots, and as such, color, to quote the AKC standard, color and markings on their overall appearance are very important points to be evaluated. Some breeds have acceptable colors specifically stated, and others may also say, quote, and any color except from those which constitutes a disqualification, quote. Like French Bulldogs, which state that white, cream, fawn, which ranges from light fawn to red fawn, or any combination foregoing is okay so long as the dog is not of a disqualifying color. The French Bulldog standard in particular goes one step above other standards to specify some colors that are DQs, like solid black, black and tan, black and white with black, blue, blue fawn, liver, and myrtle. Black means black without a trace of brindle. So in this case, it does point out specific DQ colors, but not every standard does this. Usually because the breed is only known to come in just a few colors, and a dog that isn't that color but isn't specifically stated to be a DQ, well, that's a whole can of dog food that just leads to questions on if it's a legitimate purebred or not. Also, put a pin on that Merle French Bulldog DQ I just mentioned. It'll be important later. So what does this all mean, and what does this have to do with silver labs? Well, silver is not a color in Labradors. The standard says the Labrador Retriever coat colors are black, yellow, and chocolate. Any other color or combination of colors is a disqualification. So it's not outright said silver is a DQ, but any color that is not solid black, chocolate, or yellow is a DQ. This can make it a bit confusing for some to understand, but in simple words, if it isn't one of those colors, it's not a Labrador. However, standards can be a bit hard to understand. Silver is just a lighter shade of chocolate to get technical about genes, but too light of a chocolate and it should be disqualified. But the standard just says light to dark chocolate. But how light exactly is too light and how dark is exactly too dark? The standard allows fox red as a color for yellow labs, but how red is fox red? More often than not, fox red in itself is just a backyard breeder term. This is one of the inconsistencies you have to get used to when you're showing dogs. But one thing is consistent between silver and fox red. They are too light or too dark of a color on said dogs and thus should be disqualified. Okay, I hear some of you say, like, seriously, I don't care about breed standards in dog shows, I just want a nice pet. Is my silver lab a Labrador or is he not? To that I answer, wow, pushy much? You know these videos take a while, right? And my second answer is most likely no, your lab is not a purebred. The Labrador Club of America says any lab that is not a solid color of black, chocolate, or yellow is not a purebred, and the club is correct in this manner because the only reason that silver labs can exist is from a mix that incurs the dilution gene or just a straight up mix with another breed. In other words, your lab is a mix in some regards. It just determines on what it's mixed with. The two big culprits in this option are mixed with a Weimaraner or mixed with another breed that houses the dilution gene. Let's start with the first and most common reason. Weimaraners are a German hunting breed distinguished for their silvery gray coat, and are even nicknamed the Gray Ghost. Now looking at a lab and a Weimaraner side by side, it's obvious these are two different breeds, but that hasn't stopped people from mixing them because, aside from some obvious factors, they do have similar body shapes. Namely, field labs mixed because they are much more muscular and less stocky and a similar shape to a Weimaraner versus a show lab. As such, people have crossed Weimaraners with labs in order to produce off-color mixes. However, they can be mistaken for purebred Labradors due to similar body shapes and structures. Weimaraner crosses are the most common reason for silver labs, and because of that, it isn't a purebred. Back to my school story for a moment, the pictures that the nurse showed me, I could easily tell her dog was a mix. The coat was very off, not smooth like a Weim, but not thick like a lab, but rather a combination. Plus the head shape looked not like a lab, but like a Weim, but the tail looked like a lab, you get it. Looking at the shape of her dog was a mix with a Weimaraner, and she sadly bought into the lies. May divines have mercy on her wallet for the mess of health issues she's gotten herself into. Yet there will be some people who tell me that they have a silver lab and that it is purebred because a dog's DNA test showed it as 100% Labrador. Well, DNA tests have some flaws, namely in generations. DNA tests only go back 3 generations, meaning parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents. Taking average times dogs are bred for as they age and the total number of dogs' great-grandparents, they're probably only 15 to 22 years old. They may still be around, but more often not have passed given average lifespans. 15 years is a lot for a dog, but not in humans, and I'm certain if you tested those great-great-grandparents, they're probably mixes or even completely different breeds. This is a critical flaw in DNA tests and why they aren't accurate or reliable. This is why people are able to have off-standard colored dogs and claim they're purebred. Chances are, if you went one more generation back, they are a mix. And no, I don't want to hear people fight me saying that every dog is a mixed breed because thousands of years ago there were no purebreds. But don't even get rallied up because you're going to lose this one. There's a fine difference between 15 years and 15,000 years of selective breeding. Even the original creators of the Silver Lab were involved in the Weimaraner breed, so there's a connection there. The other reason for Silver Labs is what's called a double dilution. Now hold on to your tails because this is going to get a bit confusing for anyone who doesn't have a biology degree or is a geneticist. Also, please try and keep mature when I talk about this. The dilution gene is, well, a gene which is responsible for lightening or diluting a dog's coat color. An example is a dog who would be black, if they carry the gene and show it, can instead be lightened to a pale silvery gray or blue. Chocolate or brown tends to become a pale silvery red, often pale purple, sometimes called Isabella or lilac. A dog has a set of big D's and little D's called the D loci, which affects dilution. If you can remember to your 6th grade biology class, there are two types of genes, dominant and recessive. Big D is dominant in this section, whereas little d is recessive. If a dog is labeled as big D, they cannot be dilute, nor do they carry the gene for it. If a dog is big D, little d, they don't show the dilute colors, but they carry the gene for dilute colors. And lastly, if a dog is little d, they carry and show the dilution gene, often meaning black becomes blue, red becomes Isabella. In short, you need two little d's to show the dilution of the coat. Again, this is the most bare basics of gene wording. So what does this do with Silver Labs? Well, like I said, if a dog is dilute, black becomes a silvery blue like typical Silver Labs. But, and this is a big but, Labs do not naturally have the dilution gene in them. Yes, the dilution gene is not in the Labrador's genome, and as such, for a lab to hold the gene, they must have been crossed with another breed that carries it sometime in the past. Completely unironically, one breed that does carry the dilution gene is the Weimaraner. In short, Silver Labs are mixes. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Silver Labs are mixed in some way, even if your DNA test shows 100%. They only go back 3 generations, and as such, are not reliable ways of telling if a dog is purebred. And this is why most well-bred dogs' pedigrees go back 4 or 5 generations, some cases even more. Also, another side note here, this isn't just a deal with Silver Labs either. Fox Red, Champagne, and other various rare colors follow similar practices. Remember, the only normal colors of a Labrador are black, chocolate, and yellow. Now wait a moment, I hear some of you say. Sometimes accidents happened, and it is true some good responsible breeders do occasionally have an odd color appear in a litter. Like, take a lemon Dalmatian, which is a Dalmatian with yellowish spots. It does and can happen, but one, it practically never happens in good breeders because good breeders know their dog's genes and best possible suitors, and 2, good breeders know this is not the correct color. This is the biggest difference in breeding. Good breeders know they should not breed this dog. So a good breeder would spay or neuter the faulty puppy and its genes wouldn't get passed on. Unfortunately, specifically Americans, are so drawn to the terms rare that people are willing to pour thousands of dollars into a genetically inferior dog solely because it's a rare color. Okay, but what makes this rare? Well, there is no rare in dogs. There are no rare breeds, no rare colors, no rare traits. It's responsibility, which if you watched me before, know I slam that down everyone's heads like a broken record. It is how responsible you are with dogs. People producing rare colors are not responsible because they are purposefully breeding off-standard and probably unhealthy dogs. Let's go back to lemon dals for a moment. Lemon dals exist due to the E loci. It's not dilution contrary to popular belief, as it's a completely different set of genes that determines dilution over yellowing. Back to normal Dals for a moment, the 2 normal colors for Dalmatians are black and liver, which is brown color spots. These dogs are capital BB for black spots and lowercase bb for liver. Liver is recessive to black. If a dog is capital B lower B, they show black spots but have the gene for liver and can pass it. Now for lemon Dalmatians, there's a set of E genes, or the E loci. The E loci, called extension series, includes capital and lowercase e's, capital E lowercase m's, and capital E lowercase g, and this affects black masks in dogs as well as yellow and red coats. This series affects how much albumin is in a dog's coat. As I don't want this to get too complicated, in short, for you to have yellow spots and show yellow spots, a Dalmatian must be lowercase e. Now what's the problem? Here, let me show you. Black Dalmatians and liver Dalmatians are some variations of the E and B loci. A black Dalmatian will have any combination of B and E loci, as you see on your screen, and same with the liver. Did you notice the outlier here? Lemon Dalmatians can only occur if they receive 2 copies of the lowercase e allele, and both black and liver Dalmatians cannot be EE. So for a lemon Dalmatian to exist, you need to purposefully breed for it. Now there is the very small chance that you may get a lemon Dalmatian puppy when you breed a black and or liver dog. It's genetics, so there's always some chance of something happening. But due to dominant capital E being, well, dominant, you won't if you know what you're doing. Not to mention, there is a color test which can tell you if your dog has this gene by chance. This can be completely avoided. But what's the issue with them? After all, they don't seem to be inferior, do they? They can be good pets. And you know what? That's semi-true. But the issue here isn't that they exist at all, it's that to get them, you must be actively breeding for color alone. As such, they have a vastly limited gene pool and higher chance for inbreeding. Keep in mind, lowercase ee is recessive, so they must come from recessive parents, meaning if one of those parents has a faulty gene that causes something like, say, I don't know, hip dysplasia or other genetic illness, it means that the faulty gene will get passed on, creating a puppy that will inevitably get sick. They are unhealthy by nature, have lower gene pools, and they cause the genetic issues that the general public assumes all purebreds have, which isn't the case. See Myths of Dog Show for more information. Think, if lemon Dalmatians are only, say, 10% of all Dalmatians out there, note that this isn't real number fact, it's just an example, that's a very small gene pool compared to the 90% of liver and black Dalmatians out there. What dog is going to have a higher chance of being inbred at that rate? The one with a 10% gene pool or the one with a 90% gene pool? Smaller gene pools increase the chance for inbreeding and deathly genetic disorders to pass on. Since the rare colors are by nature smaller number of the total percent of the breed out there, they have a higher chance of being inbred and higher chance of a genetic disorder. Variety is the spice of life, and if dogs, it's the same. It's not worth paying more for a rare colored dog if that dog is only going to become sick. If the only thing you see in a dog is its price tag, you don't need an animal then. Yes, very rude comment is rude, but it is true. An animal is not a thing, it's another creature. You should care about their health and state of mind, and if you only care about how much a dog is gonna cost you or what color they are, don't even bother getting an animal because you certainly aren't responsible enough for one. Now remember earlier in the video when I said put a pin on the Merle French Bulldogs? Well, here's why I'm coming back. The Merle fad. Oh dear anything, the Merle fad. If I have ever seen a fad that rivals the fad of designer dogs, it's the fad of believing everything needs to be Merle. You most probably know Merle as the blue with darker blue specks on a dog, or red with darker red specks. You've also likely heard of Dapple, which is used in dachshunds exclusively. But what is Merle? Is it a color? Is it a pattern? Well, it's both, a pattern with multiple colors. The Merle gene, or the M loci, is probably one of the most complex loci out there. There's a lot of new research being done as of the making of this video that shows Merle to be a lot more complex than is currently known. So bear in mind if you're watching this in the future, some information may be outdated. However, for the sake of this video, I'll keep it simple, which means I will not be talking about advanced Merle alleles, only standard. This means I will be ignoring the Harlequin or loci as well. You most likely know Merle through Australian Shepherds, probably the most popular of the breed that carries it. but collies of both kinds, Shetland sheepdogs, and a few others carry it also. But I must remind you, it is not in every breed. It is limited to just a select few which are on the screen right now. Merle affects not only coat color, but also skin color, eye color, and nose color. Usually the skin of a Merle dog is pink or pale, or the eyes have a high chance of being blue or heterochromia, meaning two different colors. The Merle gene dilutes only certain sections of the dog's coat, leaving some patches of the coat unaffected in the original color. Some dogs will have more or less patches of Merle on them, and it will only dilute black pigments, but this means that it is possible for a red or yellow colored dog to produce Merle puppies, so long as they carry the gene and it's not overwritten. Merle is actually dominant despite popular belief. Some people will tell me that it's not a fully dominant trait and it's rather incomplete dominant, but that is a story that will stay firmly closed as a story for another time, otherwise I will never get through this. A dog only needs one capital M in its M loci to display some Merle. If a dog is uppercase M, lowercase m, they show Merle and can pass it on. If a dog has two lowercase m's, it can't display or pass on Merle. But what if a dog has two capital M's? Well, that's a big problem. For as confusing Merle is, one thing is consistent about it. You never breed a Merle dog to another Merle dog. This genetic disaster is referred to as a double Merle, or sometimes lethal white, which is actually a bit misleading, but we'll come back to that. Myrtling the coat once turns black into blue, or liver into red, but twice leads to the coat turning an extremely pale white color. Now remember when I said Merle affects skin and eye color? Well, this is the problem. Myrtles often have pale or pink skin. This normally isn't an issue because the blue or red color of the fur helps cover the pale skin, but double Myrtles are white. White skin and fur is far more susceptible to sunburns and sun cancers. And that added slap in the tail? Double Myrtles are often blind, deaf, or both from birth. Now, despite the nickname of lethal white, the gene itself isn't deadly. Dogs who are born double Myrtles can live just fine, minus the hearing and sight. Of course, not every double Myrtle is born blind and deaf, but they're often one or both or will become one or both. So why are double Myrtles around if it's essentially an extremely faulty gene wrapped in a nice bow tie? Well, more often than not, double Myrtles are real accidents, at least from my experience. Most people know double Myrtle is seriously harmful to dogs, and even the most hardcore of hardcore backyard breeders don't breed them. Dogs don't know who they should or shouldn't breed with, so of course they'll sometimes occur, especially with wild or stray dogs. But unfortunately, due to their looks, there are those people out there who intentionally breed Myrtle to get a completely rare white dog of a breed where it isn't normally achievable, just to jack up the price. And it isn't breeders alone who do this. Personal story here of a rescue trying to have me adopt a double Myrtle Aussie puppy for $900 even though it was deaf. $900 for a deaf dog that probably wouldn't have lived past a month in the wild? No thank you. Now remember what I said about Myrtle being very limited to certain breeds? Well, here's the yuck. Myrtle French Bulldogs, Myrtle Poodles, Myrtle Pugs, no! The Myrtle gene is not normally in these breeds. Repeating that, it is not in these breeds normally. The Myrtle gene was outcrossed. This means, much like the Silver Lab, these Myrtle dogs are mixed with something else, pretty much guaranteed, and DNA tests only go back 3 generations to add to the lies. In fact, the fat of Frenchies, as I call it, is so bad the club has had to issue statements regarding the problem. Myrtle is not a natural color in Frenchies, it's not natural in Pugs, and it's not natural in Poodles. In fact, due to the rise of crossbreeds, chances are even higher that your Myrtle Poodle was probably crossed with an Aussie, the most common Myrtle breed out there to be crossed with Poodles, creating Aussie Doodles, which is a complete story for another time because that's its own can of dog food. Myrtle is only in the breeds listed on the screen, and if you discover a dog that is not one of those breeds that is Myrtle, it is outcrossed, regardless of what DNA tests say. In short, Merle, if it isn't in the breed naturally, don't try to cross and add it. Do your research and be very careful with this gene. So what's the real issue here? Does color really matter in a dog? Can't any dog be a good pet regardless of their color? Disregarding the black cat syndrome stories, any dog of any color can be a good pet. But the issue here is when people are breeding solely for color. You should not be breeding just for color. More often than not, people are getting a dog for how it fits their lifestyle, not for what color it is. Breeders should be putting a dog's health over all else, as I have mentioned this many times on my channel. If any breeder is breeding for color alone and willing to sacrifice health for it, that isn't a good breeder. In other words, you don't want color to be your deciding factor. If the only thing a breeder is advertising in this litter is a rare color or extra large and small or some other random oodle name and nothing else, no tests, no titles, etc., then go away. That's not a good breeder. There is no rare when it comes to dogs. There are no rare breeds, no rare colors. It's about finding and being responsible about it. Good breeders breed for the better. Mills breed for money, and backyard breeders breed for fads. Don't line those mills and backyard breeders' wallets for a dog that's more likely to have issues and die early. In fact, those breeders are why people at places like Westminster get blamed for problems that aren't our fault. We get put under the same umbrella as backyard breeders and mills when we're not even remotely the same. And it's so sad because people at Westminster put so much love and care into their dogs, and I hate seeing them get looped in the same lasso as people churning out puppies as fast as possible for profit. Purebreds can be healthy. It's just that most people don't look hard enough for a well-meaning breeder, or they don't want to pay $3,000 for it when they can get a cheaper puppy elsewhere. That in itself is another problem, because if all you see in a dog is how much it's going to cost you, you don't need an animal. You don't need a pet because you aren't responsible for one, so no wonder you'll get rejected by the well-meaning breeder. It's okay to ask for an estimate, but not understanding the laundry list of prerequisites that go into trying to breed responsibly, and you wonder why good breeders get pissed off when potential buyers only see the price tag. Then it makes even less sense when you're willing to drop twice or even thrice as much on a different dog solely because it's a rare color, which doesn't make a jack bit of sense. Look, the point is this. Don't let color or price be the factor when looking for a dog. A dog is a living creature, and you're not getting one for a bragging right because it's rare. You're getting one for a companion. Care for them, and they will care for you.